The Wells Fargo fake account scandal stands as one of the most notorious examples of corporate misconduct in recent financial history. This scandal, marked by the creation of millions of unauthorized accounts, a culture of unrealistic sales targets, and systemic ethical lapses, provides a stark case study for examining ethical, legal, and stakeholder-related issues in large financial institutions. We explore how the scandal unfolded between 2002 and 2016, discuss the inherent cultural and structural problems within Wells Fargo, review the legal and regulatory repercussions, and analyze the broader impact on employees, customers, investors, and industry stakeholders. Through detailed narrative analysis supported by internal documents and public reports, we aim to illuminate the mechanisms by which unethical practices can become institutionalized and offer insights into how companies can avoid similar pitfalls in the future. The Wells Fargo scandal did not emerge overnight. Rather, it evolved over more than a decade as a consequence of systemic failures in risk management, oversight, and corporate culture. Multiple sources document that the unethical practices within Wells Fargo date back as far as 2002, with the most conspicuous period occurring between 2011 and 2016, when employees were pressured to meet aggressive cross-selling targets. Initial signs of troubling culture emerged when senior leadership began setting unrealistic expectations for revenue generation and cross-selling. Reports indicate that even from the early 2000s, management and the board's approach to risk management signaled implicit approval of disregarding ethical norms in pursuit of financial performance. The scandal reached its zenith during this period as employees, under pressure to meet lofty sales quotas, such as selling 8 products per customer, far above the industry average of 2 or 3, resorted to opening millions of unauthorized accounts. Internal documents revealed that approximately 2 million fake accounts were created, resulting in over $2.6 million in unjust fees charged to customers. Employees were left to face the impossible task of meeting targets by any means necessary, a climate that ultimately incentivized fraudulent behavior. It was in 2016, when the scandal was publicly exposed, that the magnitude of these unethical practices became undeniable. The company fired over 5,300 employees linked to the misconduct, and it later emerged that Wells Fargo had also charged unwarranted fees in other divisions, such as mortgage and auto insurance. Multiple regulatory agencies launched investigations into the bank's practices, leading to a series of fines and settlements. Following the exposure, federal and state regulators, including the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, imposed significant fines on Wells Fargo. A deferred prosecution agreement was reached in which Wells Fargo agreed to pay $3 billion to settle both criminal and civil liabilities stemming from the scandal. While the bank attempted to restore trust through various reforms and a major marketing campaign, reputational damage proved to be long-lasting. At the heart of the Wells Fargo scandal lies a pervasive failure in corporate ethics. The relentless push for increased sales, driven by unrealistic performance goals, fostered an environment where unethical behavior could flourish. One of the central ethical issues was the lack of a risk management culture. Internal reports suggest that the board of directors and upper management not only failed to set an ethical tone from the top, but in some cases inadvertently encouraged behavior that prioritized short-term gains over long-term integrity. As one source notes, Wells Fargo's poor risk management culture comes from the very top. When top executives and board members do not hold themselves accountable for ethical decision-making, the message is clear. It is acceptable to circumvent ethical guidelines in the pursuit of profit. The bank set sales targets that were not only aggressive, but were demonstrably impractical. For example, the expectation for employees to sell 8 products per customer far exceeded industry norms and forced many into making unethical decisions. Frontline employees were acutely aware that these numbers were unattainable without resorting to unethical practices, yet the culture remained uncorrected by senior leadership. Additionally, high-performing executives enjoyed considerable autonomy and lucrative bonuses, further distancing upper management from the operational challenges faced by their subordinates. Another ethical flaw was how the institution handled dissent and internal whistleblowing. Despite the presence of an ethics program, employees who reported questionable practices or raised concerns were often met with retaliation. Such punitive measures against those who sought to uphold ethical standards deepened the erosion of trust within the organization and further entrenched the toxic sales culture. The unethical practices at Wells Fargo were not only morally reprehensible, but also in clear violation of multiple legal standards. The bank's actions involved the covert creation of millions of unauthorized accounts, a direct violation of consumer protection laws. Employees, under intense pressure to meet inflated sales quotas, created accounts without the consent of customers, resulting in unauthorized charges and fees. This fraudulent activity violated several laws and regulations meant to protect consumers from deceptive banking practices. The misuse of customer identities and the resultant false records were clear breaches of ethical and legal norms. Following the public exposure in 2016, multiple regulatory bodies, including the CFPB and OCC, began rigorous investigations into Wells Fargo's practices. As reported by U.S. Attorney Nick Hanna, the scandal illustrates a complete failure of leadership and led directly to severe legal consequences. Ultimately, Wells Fargo agreed to pay $3 billion to resolve potential criminal and civil liabilities, which included both a deferred prosecution agreement and various civil claims under laws like the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act. These financial penalties underscore the gravity of the violations and serve as a cautionary tale for the financial industry. Beyond the immediate legal ramifications, the scandal precipitated a broader institutional overhaul at Wells Fargo. The bank was compelled to implement reforms aimed at strengthening compliance, enhancing transparency, and rebuilding the trust of its customers. Notable reforms included restructuring incentive programs to eliminate unrealistic sales targets and revamping internal audit practices. Despite these measures, the reputational damage incurred has had lasting negative impact on the bank's financial stability and public image. One of the most critical aspects of the Wells Fargo scandal was the way in which upper management and the board of directors responded to the mounting evidence of unethical behavior. Multiple sources reveal that the board and senior executives were well aware of the growing issues long before the public scandal erupted. For instance, the board's lead independent director stated that while an external assessment was engaged, the board believed that it was acting appropriately based on the information available at the time. This suggests a troubling disconnect between what was known internally and the actions taken to mitigate unethical practices. In a case of misplaced accountability, the scandal was largely attributed to bad actors among lower-level employees rather than addressing the systemic issues embedded in the incentive structures. Senior leadership's tendency to shift blame away from the structural problems to individual shortcomings further exacerbated internal mistrust and allowed the unethical practices to proliferate unchecked. The failure of upper management to acknowledge the role of the toxic sales culture and unrealistic targets is a significant factor that contributed to the scandal's eventual exposure. The compensation model at Wells Fargo was heavily weighted towards achieving aggressive cross-selling metrics. While branch-level employees were incentivized with bonuses tied directly to the number of unauthorized accounts opened, senior executives' bonus systems did not align with these problematic sales metrics. This disconnect between performance incentives at different levels played a crucial role in the oversight failure and retaliation of unethical behavior. The emphasis on financial performance, even at the cost of ethical breaches, reflects a profound misalignment in corporate governance. The repercussions of the Wells Fargo scandal extended far beyond the confines of the bank's internal operations, affecting a wide array of stakeholders and triggering ripple effects across the industry. Customers bore the brunt of the scandal. Unauthorized accounts openings led to unjust fees, and many clients found themselves facing financial hardships and eroded trust in a previously respected institution. The widespread nature of the fraudulent activities has caused long-term damage to customer relations, making it difficult for affected individuals to recoup both financially and emotionally. The fallout has led to a significant loss of customer confidence, with many opting to move their business to competitors. Employees were caught in a no-win situation. On one hand, they were placed under impossible performance pressures, while on the other, those who resisted or reported unethical practices were punished. Over 5,300 employees were terminated in connection with the scandal, creating a sense of pervasive distrust and demoralization within the workforce. The punitive approach to internal whistleblowing not only diminished morale, but also impaired the organization's ability to self-correct. The scandal also inflicted severe damage on investor confidence and disrupted the financial markets. Once celebrated for its strong performance and reputation, Wells Fargo's stock price experienced significant declines in the wake of the revelations. Investors, facing billions of dollars in fines and settlements, experienced losses that impacted their portfolios. The scandal served as a stark reminder of how corporate misconduct can have broad financial repercussions, undermining trust in the financial stability of major institutions. Regulatory agencies, including the CFPB and OCC, were forced to reconsider existing oversight frameworks, ultimately imposing stricter regulations and more severe penalties on banks to prevent future misconduct. The scandal prompted calls for improved corporate governance practices, increased transparency, and more robust internal controls across the financial sector. This case has influenced policy debates and has led to a more cautious approach toward bank regulation and oversight. The Wells Fargo scandal offers numerous lessons in corporate governance, ethics, and risk management. Reflecting on these lessons is critical for organizations aiming to avoid similar pitfalls. The pervasive focus on short-term financial performance at Wells Fargo ultimately undermined long-term success. Institutions must establish and maintain an ethical culture that resists the temptation to sacrifice integrity for immediate gains. This necessitates clear communication from senior leadership about the importance of ethical behavior in every aspect of business operations. Robust internal controls and risk management systems are essential for identifying and mitigating unethical behavior before it escalates into a full-blown crisis. The case of Wells Fargo highlights the critical need for centralized risk functions that maintain oversight even in decentralized organizational structures. Improved monitoring, rigorous audits, and transparency in reporting mechanisms are all vital components of an effective risk management strategy. One of the fundamental issues at Wells Fargo was the misalignment between performance incentives and ethical conduct. Instead of using unrealistic metrics that encourage questionable practices, companies should design compensation systems that reward ethical behavior, customer satisfaction, and long-term performance. This may involve recalibrating sales targets and ensuring that incentive structures do not inadvertently promote unethical shortcuts. A culture in which employees feel safe to report misconduct is crucial for early detection and resolution of unethical practices. Organizations should create robust, confidential channels for whistleblowing and protect those who come forward from retaliation. This not only improves internal governance, but also builds trust among employees and other stakeholders. The board of directors must assume ultimate responsibility for setting the ethical tone of the organization. This involves regular reviews of risk management practices, active engagement with senior management regarding compliance issues, and the willingness to take corrective action when necessary. Greater board accountability can serve as an upstream barrier to the kinds of systemic failures witnessed at Wells Fargo. The narrative of the Wells Fargo fake account scandal is a powerful illustration of how corporate culture, when misaligned with ethical principles, can lead to widespread and enduring damage. Throughout this examination, we have seen that the scandal was not the result of a few isolated incidents, but rather a systemic failure involving unrealistic sales targets, ineffective oversight, and a pervasive disregard for ethical practices. The repercussions were immense, affecting customers, employees, investors, and the entire financial ecosystem. By understanding the multifaceted aspects of the Wells Fargo fake account scandal, from its ethical failings and legal violations to the sweeping impact on stakeholders, we gain invaluable insights into modern corporate governance. Financial institutions must learn from these lessons to rebuild trust, strengthen ethical practices, and ensure that the pursuit of profit does not come at the expense of integrity. The Wells Fargo case will undoubtedly serve as a cautionary tale and a catalyst for industry-wide reforms in years to come.